こんにちは。私の部屋 AJ's トークルームへようこそ。
Hello, and welcome to AJ's Talk Room.
この動画はシリーズの第2作目で、私 AJ がサンフランシスコから訪日中のアメリカ人サラさんと共に日米の観光や旅の合間に楽しむゴルフの魅力について語り合います。
This is the second episode of the series. Today, I'm joined by Sarah, who is visiting Japan from San Francisco. We'll be talking about travel experiences in both the US and Japan, including the joy of playing golf along the way. Sarah, it's great to have you here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Thanks for having me, AJ. I've been looking forward to our conversation too. Actually, I've been curious, what exactly is AJ's Talk Room all about?
AJ's Talk Room is where travel, sports, and culture come together. In this episode, we focus on golf, but each episode features a different sport, shared through travel experiences and personal stories. This series isn't just another talk show. It blends real conversations with immersive storytelling, where you'll discover something new along the way. With cinematic storytelling and practical insights, we make learning effortless. Explore new places, gain travel tips, and improve your language skills, all while enjoying the experience. Today's discussion will last about an hour, with plenty of photos and videos to bring it to life. In fact, what you're watching now is an example. These are photos I took at Lake Powell. I'll share more about this later in this video. AJ's Talk Room is about learning through watching, listening, and imagining future journeys. Just like real travel, where new discoveries come naturally. The name AJ comes from A for America and J for Japan, reflecting how this series connects these two worlds. Whether you're from Japan or the US, this series is designed to be both engaging and insightful. I hope this journey through travel, sports, culture, and language learning brings you new experiences, perspectives, and exciting discoveries.
That sounds exciting. I love your concept. It's such an innovative and creative way to explore travel, sports, and cultural differences.
Well, before we begin, let me show you a photo. Can you guess where this is?
It looks like somewhere in Arizona or Utah, right? Wow, it's a view from a tee box. Amazing.
This is Sky Mountain Golf Course in Hurricane, Utah, one of the most scenic courses I played during my trip to the American Southwest in 2019, and I want to share the story with you today.
That sounds interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
この動画では AJ とサラが日本とアメリカの観光地を巡り、その合間にゴルフも楽しむという旅について語り合います。会話は英語で進行しますが、正確な日本語の字幕が表示されるので、会話の雰囲気をそのまま感じながら、正しい内容をご理解いただけると思います。また、2人の会話は旅の思い出話にとどまらず、旅行の際に役立つ実用的な情報もさりげなく紹介していきます。宿泊施設やゴルフ場の予約方法、空の旅での注意点、スマートフォンの活用法、レンタカー利用のポイントなど、旅をより快適に楽しむためのヒントが盛り込まれています。旅の魅力を存分に感じられる映像とともに、皆さんをリアルな旅行体験へとご案内します。景色を楽しみながらゴルフもできる旅って、どんな感じ？そんな疑問を持っている方はもちろん、ゴルフをしない一般的な旅行を考えている方にも役立つ内容になっています。それでは、お二人の会話と映像をお楽しみください。
I understand you'll be heading back to the US tomorrow. You've just returned from Nikko, where you played some golf. How was your trip?
It was fantastic. My boyfriend and I first spent 3 nights in Tokyo before heading to Nikko, where we played 3 rounds of golf. It was such a unique experience. In Nikko, we also visited Toshogu Shrine and Lake Chuzenji, and both were absolutely breathtaking. The combination of history, nature, and golf made the trip really special.
That's great. We did the same in 2019 when we visited the Grand Circle, even though golf wasn't our top priority.
Oh, that's the story you told me. How long was your trip?
My wife and I took a 2-week road trip through the Grand Circle, starting in Las Vegas and ending in Phoenix. Along the way, we explored breathtaking landscapes, played 5 rounds of golf in some truly spectacular locations, and made unforgettable memories.
That sounds like an incredible trip. Was it a direct flight from Tokyo to Las Vegas?
No, we had a layover in San Francisco and ran into some trouble.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, when we landed in San Francisco, we had to go through U.S. Immigration and Customs, even though we were just transferring to another flight. Unlike in some countries where transit passengers stay in a secure area, the U.S. requires all arriving passengers, including those with connecting flights, to clear immigration, collect their checked luggage, go through customs, and then recheck their bags for the next flight. Fortunately, the whole process went smoothly, including the immigration interview, luggage claim, and customs clearance. But once we rechecked our bags, we had to exit the security area completely, which meant going through security screening all over again before heading to our departure gate. That's when we realized the airport was jam-packed. The security line was ridiculously long. We were getting nervous because time was running out, and we barely made it to our connecting flight just in time. At the airport in Las Vegas, we found that our suitcases had arrived with us, but our golf travel bag hadn't, probably because oversized items are handled separately. This was the second problem we faced, following our experience at San Francisco Airport. So far, you've been watching a series of pictures of Las Vegas, but soon I'll show you some photos of the Grand Canyon to give you a better sense of our trip while sharing this part of the story. Fortunately, our bag arrived on the next flight a couple of hours later. While waiting, we used a $30 meal coupon from the airline, given as an apology for the trouble, to grab some fast food. But with the airport that crowded, it was a good reminder that tight layovers in the U.S. can be risky.
That's a lot to deal with after a long flight. Having to go through immigration and security again, especially with long lines, must have been exhausting. San Francisco International Airport wasn't crowded when we were there, and the check-in process was surprisingly smooth. We noticed how much it had changed since our last flight. Almost everything was self-service, with very little interaction with attendants. Our arrival in Tokyo was much smoother by comparison. Immigration was quick, and our regular suitcases came out right away, but for oversized luggage like golf bags, it took a little longer because Narita Airport has a separate pickup area for large items instead of delivering them on the regular baggage carousel.
Yeah, we noticed some changes even back in 2019 when it came to airport automation, but it's been more than 5 years since then, so I can only imagine how much has advanced now.
Speaking of advancements, there were a couple of things that really made our trip easier. First, using an eSIM made a huge difference. While waiting for our flight at San Francisco Airport, we set it up, so the moment we landed in Tokyo, we could use our smartphones. Even while waiting at baggage claim, it was incredibly convenient for checking limousine bus schedules, directions, and hotel details, all without worrying about Wi-Fi. Second, Google Translate was a lifesaver. It made navigating signs, menus, and even small conversations so much easier. Having it on hand gave us a lot more confidence exploring Tokyo. Since we planned to play golf in Nikko, we used Tokyo Bend, a luggage delivery service, to send our golf bags directly from Narita Airport to the golf course. This saved us from carrying them through Tokyo, making our travel much easier. Of course, we still had to handle our bags when dropping them off and picking them up at the airport and the golf courses, but it was a small effort, considering how much more convenient it made the trip.
That's good to know. You can play golf without a rental car, and you can travel light.
Actually, we rented a car for 2 days while in Nikko. To keep things simple and economical, we packed 2 small golf sets into 1 large golf travel bag. That way, we didn't have to carry too much, making it easier to get around.
ただいま、AJ が今回の旅で撮影したグランドキャニオンの映像をご覧いただきました。ここからは、アメリカ旅行に役立つポイントをご紹介します。アンテロープキャニオンの映像を楽しみながらお聞きください。まず、最近の国際線の空港では自動化が進み、チェックインや手荷物の預け入れがセルフサービス化されています。空港によっては顔認証を使った搭乗手続きも導入され、以前よりスムーズに移動できるようになっています。また、アメリカで乗り継ぎをする場合は、一度入国審査を受け、預け荷物をピックアップし、再度チェックインする必要があります。 乗り継ぎ時間が短い場合は特に注意が必要です。さらに、eSIM を活用すれば、空港到着直後からスマートフォンを利用できます。アメリカや日本の主要空港では無料 Wi-Fi もありますが、安定した接続を求めるなら eSIM が便利です。料金は10日間から2週間で約20ドル程度と手頃で、日本を訪れる旅行者にも人気があります。ただし、eSIM を利用しても、アメリカの一部地域では電波が弱い、または圏外になることがあります。特に、グランドキャニオンやモニュメントバレーのような自然公園や田舎のエリアでは、通信が不安定になることが多いため、事前にオフラインマップをダウンロードしておくことをお勧めします。さらに、レンタカーを借りる際、カーナビのオプションを勧められることがありますが、これは1日あたり10ドル以上かかるため、コストパフォーマンスはあまり良くありません。代わりに、スマートフォンの地図アプリを活用すれば、無料で最新の情報を利用できるためおすすめです。また、ホテルやビジターセンターでは Wi-Fi が利用できる場所もあるため、通信環境が限られるエリアでは、計画的に情報を取得することが重要です。
She gives great travel tips, and this Antelope Canyon scenery is just stunning. But let's jump back to Tokyo for a second. Take a look at this map. Our hotel was near TCAT, which is circled in green. The area is more affordable than hotels in Shinjuku, Shibuya, or near Tokyo Station, and it's well connected by Tokyo Metro and Toei Subway, making it easy to explore the city. We stayed at this hotel for our entire time in Tokyo, including after we returned from Nikko. After arriving at the airport, we took a limousine bus to TCAT in Hakazaki, about 2 miles east of Tokyo Station. It was super convenient. Located near Sui Tengu Shrine, there are 2 subway stations, just a stone's throw from our hotel, making it easy to get around the city. We spent 3 nights there before heading to Nikko. From our hotel, we took the subway to Asakusa Station, where we boarded the Tobu train, a quick and comfortable 2-hour ride to Nikko. 3 days ago, we returned to the same hotel near TCAT. Since we planned to explore the city by subway, we got a 72-hour Tokyo subway ticket for just 1,500 yen. It gave us unlimited rides on Tokyo Metro and Toei Subway, which saved us both time and money. Plus, we didn't have to worry about buying tickets each time. It was such a great deal and made getting around Tokyo even more convenient.
Speaking of Asakusa, did you go to Semsoji?
Yes, we did. On the second day of our stay in Tokyo, I woke up very early in the morning because of jet lag and checked Google Maps to figure out how to get to Tokyo Station. Later, we went to the nearby subway station and bought 72-hour subway tickets. We took the subway to Otemachi and then walked to Tokyo Station to see its beautiful red brick facade in the morning light. After that, we headed to Asakusa. By then, the temple area was already lively with visitors. We walked through Kaminarimon, admired the massive lantern, and strolled down Nakamisa Street, browsing shops filled with traditional snacks and souvenirs. At the main hall, I offered a prayer and got my omikuji fortune. It was a good one. Then, I stopped by a shop selling freshly made ningyo-yaki and enjoyed them while taking in the atmosphere. After that, I headed to Ueno and later Akihabara. But enough about my day, I'm curious about yours. What happened after you arrived in Las Vegas? Did you spend the night there?
That afternoon, we decided to try our luck at the casino. We played a bit of slot machines and roulette, and at one point, I was up by just over $100. But before I could give it all back, we walked away. Shortly after, we took a stroll along the strip and came across a giant observation wheel. We didn't know its name at first, but soon found out it was called the High Roller. We decided to use the money we had won at the casino to ride it. A great decision, as it gave us an incredible view of the city lights just as the sun was setting and the sky turned dark. Then we headed back to the hotel to get some rest.
No way. I've been to Las Vegas several times, but I've never won a single dollar. You must have some secret strategy. Or did you visit a shrine to pray for super good luck before the trip?
Well, when you visited Sensoji or Toshogu, did you make sure to pray properly for some luck or good fortune?
Oh no, that explains it. I must have prayed improperly. That's why my padding was so bad in Nikko.
Too bad, a little late for that now. but hey, you can visit Suitungu Shrine near your hotel after this talk session. Anyway, I want to continue my story, but for now enjoy these photos of Bryce Canyon, famous for its breathtaking rock formations called hoodoos. Shaped by millions of years of erosion, the canyon's landscape feels almost otherworldly. While we only spent 3 to 4 hours there on our 4th day of our trip, it's definitely a place worth visiting at least once. Now, let me tell you the rest of my journey. The next morning we hit the road and headed to St. George, Utah, our first stop on the Grand Circle adventure. You know, staying in Las Vegas is always a great deal. As long as you don't lose too much at the casino, hotels there are much cheaper compared to many other U.S. cities. So we were able to enjoy a comfortable stay without breaking the bank.
I know. By the way, how far is St. George? Is the city located north of Vegas?
Yeah, St. George is about 120 miles northeast of Las Vegas, so it's about a 2-hour drive along Interstate 15. The road takes you through the Mojave Desert, and once you cross into Utah, the scenery starts to change. It gets greener, and you start seeing these beautiful red rock formations. Instead of stopping in St. George, we continued a bit further and turned right onto Route 9, heading toward Zion National Park. Our destination for the night was Hurricane, a small town closer to the park. We stayed at Motel 8, which was a great budget-friendly choice. The room was clean and spacious, and it worked perfectly as a base for our visit to Zion the next day.
You went to the golf course directly, I assume?
Yes, we arrived in St. George before midday, grabbed a quick lunch at McDonald's, and then headed to Sky Mountain Golf Course, a public 18-hole course owned and operated by the city of Hurricane, a small town right next to St. George. It took another 30 minutes or so to get there. By the way, you've been watching pictures of the golf course, and you'll continue seeing them throughout our conversation, so enjoy the scenery as we talk. There are several upscale golf courses in the area, but we chose this one for a relaxed casual round to start the trip. Since we knew the course offers a twilight rate after 12:30 p.m., we aimed for that tee time to take advantage of a $10 discount. We didn't have high expectations, but the course turned out to be fantastic. It wasn't crowded at all, and we managed to finish our round in about 3 hours. The red rock formations surrounding the course were absolutely stunning, making the entire round feel like a mix of golf and sightseeing. After golf, we drove to Hurricane and checked into Motel 8 before 5 p.m., so we still had plenty of time in the evening. On the way to our motel, we stopped by Pizza Hut and picked up a large pizza to go. Before leaving Las Vegas, we had also stopped at Walmart to stock up on beer, wine, snacks, and even a salad pack, keeping them chilled in a cooler. It wasn't just because Utah has stricter alcohol regulations. It was also a way to save both money and time. This is one of our little travel tricks, a time and money saver when traveling in the U.S., helping us cut down on unnecessary dining at pricey restaurants.
Yes, we do the same. These days, tipping at restaurants is often more than 20%, especially for dinner, and the final bill can get pretty outrageous.
Sorry to interrupt, but what you just saw was the view from the tee box. The same picture you saw at the beginning of our conversation. Do you remember it now?
Oh, right, now that you mention it, I do remember that view. That course looked amazing. Was it as scenic in person as it seemed in the picture?
Yeah, it was even more stunning in person. The red rock formations surrounding the fairways made every hole feel like part of a scenic postcard. We spent the next 2 days in Zion National Park, and the first thing we did was purchase the America the Beautiful Pass for $80. Here's an image of the pass. You can find more details online, but in short, this pass covers entrance fees, not just for Zion, but for all national parks and federal recreation areas across the U.S. for an entire year. Since we planned to visit multiple parks on this trip, it was definitely worth it. After that, we headed to Zion Lodge, the only accommodation inside the park, deep within the restricted area of Zion Canyon. Staying here for 2 nights was a great decision, as it allowed us to experience Zion's beauty up close, starting early in the morning before the crowds arrived. For the next few minutes, I'll take you on a visual journey through Zion National Park. You'll experience our adventure through photos and videos, starting with a drive along the Zion Mount Carmel Highway, traveling from the east side to the west. From there, we'll explore the Observation Point Trail, one of the park's most rewarding hikes, before taking in the scenic surroundings of Zion Lodge. Then we'll visit the Canyon Overlook Trail, a shorter but equally breathtaking viewpoint. Finally, we'll wrap up our time in Zion before continuing on to Bryce Canyon.
That sounds interesting. I've heard of Zion before, but I don't know much about it. From the way you describe it, it seems like a place with so many different landscapes to explore. I'm really looking forward to seeing the photos and videos of your experience, especially the hikes. Observation Point sounds amazing, and I'm curious to see what makes the Canyon Overlook Trail special. AJ, what I've been watching is the video of the Zion Mount Carmel Highway, right?
Yes, this is the scenic drive from the east entrance of Zion National Park toward the main canyon on the west side. The Zion Mount Carmel Highway stretches for about 25 miles, 40 kilometers, and offers some of the most spectacular views in the park. As you have seen, on the east side of the tunnel, the landscape feels more open, with rolling sandstone hills often referred to as slick rock. The terrain here is unique, with rounded wave-like formations and scattered ponderosa pines adding a striking contrast to the rugged cliffs. Now, we've arrived at the Zion Mount Carmel Tunnel. One of the most impressive features of this drive is the Zion Mount Carmel Tunnel, which was built in the 1920s to connect the eastern and western sides of the park. It's over 1 mile, 1.8 kilometers long, and since it was designed for smaller vehicles back then, large RVs and buses still require an escort to pass through. Because of its narrow design, the tunnel operates on an alternating one-way system for larger vehicles. So at certain times, traffic in one direction must stop and wait while vehicles from the other side pass through. This can cause short delays, but it also gives visitors a moment to appreciate the stunning surroundings before continuing the drive. As you've seen, the moment you exit the tunnel on the west side, the landscape changes dramatically. The canyon walls feel much closer, and the famous Great Arch of Zion comes into view. From here, the road winds downward toward the Zion Canyon Scenic Drive, which follows the Virgin River northward. This section of the park is restricted to shuttle buses for most of the year, providing access to the main hiking trails and popular viewpoints. For many visitors, this highway is their first glimpse of Zion, and it really sets the stage for the dramatic landscapes that await inside the park.
I understand that Zion is one of the most popular national parks, but what makes it stand out from other national parks? What do you think draws so many visitors here?
Let me explain while you watch photos and videos from our time on the Observation Point Trail, one of the most rewarding trails in Zion. Zion is one of the most popular national parks in the U.S., and for good reason. It's easily accessible. Located just a few hours from Las Vegas, making it a favorite destination for travelers looking to experience the beauty of the American Southwest. The park is home to many incredible trails, each offering breathtaking views of towering sandstone cliffs, deep canyons, and lush riverbanks. Whether you're looking for a challenging hike like Angel's Landing or a more scenic walk through the Narrows, Zion has something for everyone. Another reason Zion is such a great destination is its proximity to other amazing places. Many visitors, including us on this trip, combine Zion with nearby parks like Bryce Canyon, which we visited next. And if you take the road through Kanab, a small town between Zion, Bryce Canyon, and the north rim of the Grand Canyon, even more incredible destinations become accessible, like Lake Powell and more. Now take a look at these photos from our hike to Observation Point, one of the highest viewpoints in Zion National Park. This trail is about 8 miles, 13 kilometers round trip, and gains nearly 2,100 feet 640 meters in elevation, making it a challenging but incredibly rewarding hike. The route takes you through Echo Canyon, a narrow, winding section filled with towering rock walls, before opening up to vast panoramic views. The final stretch of the hike leads to Observation Point, which sits at an elevation of 6,507 feet, 1,983 meters, even higher than Angel's Landing. The view from up here is absolutely breathtaking. You can see the entire Zion Canyon spread out below, with the winding Virgin River snaking through the valley and massive sandstone cliffs rising on either side. Standing at the top, looking out over this vast landscape, you really get a sense of just how grand and powerful nature is. The colors, the textures, the sheer scale of everything, it's the kind of place that makes you stop and just take it all in. For us, the effort of the hike was completely worth it. The sense of accomplishment, the peacefulness of being so high above the canyon, and the incredible view. It was easily one of the highlights of our trip to Zion.
写真はザイオン国立公園のビジターセンターです。アメリカの国立公園には、このように公園の情報を提供する施設が設けられています。公園を訪れた際には、まず、ビジターセンターに立ち寄り、公園内のトレイルや施設の情報を入手することをお勧めします。アメリカの国立公園の入場料は近年上昇しており、ザイオンやグランドキャニオンのような人気の国立公園では、1週間有効なパスが車1台につき$35かかります。しかし、複数の国立公園を巡る場合にお得な方法として、アメリカザ・ビューティフルパスがあります。このパスは年間$80で、ザイオン、ブライスキャニオン、グランドキャニオンを含む全米の国立公園や連邦管理のレクリエーションエリアの入園料をカバーします。個別に支払うよりもお得になることが多いため、特に複数の国立公園を訪れる予定の旅行者にはおすすめです。一方、国立公園内のロッジは非常に人気が高く、予約が取りにくいため、早めの予約が必要です。例えば、ザイオンロッジやグランドキャニオンロッジは、宿泊希望日の1年前から予約が可能ですが、すぐに満室になることも多いので、計画的に予約をすることが大切です。また、予約の際はキャンセルポリシーや変更ルールも確認しておくと安心です。ロッジによっては、キャンセル料が発生する時期や変更手数料が異なるため、事前に公式サイトで詳細を確認することをお勧めします。
We stayed at Zion Lodge for 2 nights and did a lot of hiking. As you've seen in the photos, we hiked the Observation Point Trail and explored many trails in the valley, including the Riverside Walk, which leads to the entrance of the Narrows. On our last morning before leaving the park, we took a short hike to the Canyon Overlook Trail, a relatively easy but rewarding trail leading to a breathtaking viewpoint. We were able to park easily since it was early in the morning, but I knew that this area was usually quite crowded, and parking could be difficult to find later in the day. The trail was about a mile round trip, with rocky steps, a few narrow ledges, and stunning desert vegetation along the way. Once we reached the overlook, we were greeted with a breathtaking panoramic view of Zion's deep canyons and towering cliffs. The viewpoint was about the size of a basketball court, and when we arrived, there was just one other couple. They left shortly after, leaving us as the only ones there. We spent about 15 to 20 minutes soaking in the incredible scenery, with the vast landscape stretching out before us. Looking down from the overlook, we could see the exact winding road we had driven that morning to reach the trailhead and the viewpoint. It was the perfect way to wrap up our time in Zion. By late morning, we left the park and headed toward Bryce Canyon National Park.
Now I can really see why Zion is such a popular destination.
It took just over 2 hours to reach the entrance of Bryce Canyon National Park. As mentioned earlier, and as you've already seen in the photos, Bryce Canyon is known for its stunning hoodoos and breathtaking viewpoints. We spent about 3 to 4 hours exploring the canyon, taking in its incredible rock formations and scenic vistas. By 5 p.m., we left Bryce and continued our journey, arriving in Kanab around 7 p.m., where we checked into a motel we had booked in advance. It had been a long day. We started with a morning hike on the Canyon Overlook Trail in Zion, then explored Bryce Canyon in the afternoon. After all that, we grabbed a quick dinner and called it a night, resting up for the next leg of our journey.
Why did you stay in Bryce Canyon for less than 4 hours? It seems like a place where you could easily spend an entire day exploring.
Yeah, I know. It was a pretty short visit for such an incredible place. Ideally, we would have stayed longer, but we had a tight schedule and needed to reach Kanab that evening. Our plan was to visit multiple national parks on this trip, so we had to balance our time. Bryce Canyon is shaped like a vast natural amphitheater, with towering rock formations and sweeping panoramic views from the surrounding overlooks. The scenery is absolutely stunning, but since many viewpoints offer similar perspectives, I felt a shorter visit would still allow us to appreciate its unique beauty when planning our itinerary.
I see what you mean, but I imagine spending a full day there would give you a different experience.
I know. There are so many places I want to visit in this area. I still remember very well what happened when I visited here in 2014. I actually made a plan to visit the Wave, a stunning sandstone formation near Kanab. But since access is limited to just a few dozen visitors a day, I had to join the lottery. Unfortunately, I didn't win a permit, so I ended up visiting some lesser-known spots in the area instead. These are some of the pictures I took during that trip.
I've heard about the Wave. Isn't it that place with the swirling wave-like rock patterns?
Exactly. It's like nature's artwork carved into sandstone. Here are a few pictures I saw at the lottery office in Kanab, along with one I found on Wikimedia Commons to give you a better idea. Well, for this trip, I considered entering the lottery again, but it didn't make sense to leave part of our itinerary up in the air, so we decided to stick with a straightforward plan, leaving Kanab in the morning and heading to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Instead of heading straight to the Grand Canyon Lodge, we decided to stop at a few viewpoints of the North Rim along the way. The first stop was Point Imperial, the highest viewpoint on the North Rim at 8,803 feet, 2,683 meters. From there, we could see the Painted Desert stretching out in the distance, with the Grand Canyon's layered rock formations glowing in the late morning light. Next, we drove to Angel's Window, a natural rock arch that offers a stunning view of the Colorado River far below. Standing there, looking through the opening in the rock, we were reminded just how vast and deep the canyon really is. We took our time at the viewpoints, soaking in the vast, colorful landscape stretching to the horizon. It was a moment of quiet reflection, appreciating the canyon's immense scale. Then, we followed the winding road back and arrived at the lodge in the mid-afternoon. I've visited the Grand Canyon Lodge several times, but I decided to stop by the North Rim again because I had such great memories of the lodge. The atmosphere there is much quieter and more relaxed than at any other park in this region, especially compared to the South Rim, which made it an easy decision to include it in this trip. When I arrived, the lobby-like common area was relatively crowded, as many day visitors tend to gather there around this time of day. The main lodge building looked exactly as I remembered it from my previous visit. Our cabin was also the same, a small wooden cabin set back from the canyon without a view. But that didn't really matter, since the lodge's main building offered some of the best vistas in the park. After settling in, we decided to stretch our legs and explore one of the short scenic trails near the lodge, the Bright Angel Point Trail. It's a relatively easy walk that leads to a stunning viewpoint. The narrow paved path follows a ridge that extends out into the canyon, offering breathtaking views on both sides. With sheer drop-offs and panoramic vistas, it's the perfect introduction to the grandeur of the North Rim, especially after a long morning of driving. The main lodge building has a timeless rustic charm, with its log beams, stone walls, and expansive windows that perfectly frame the canyon's stunning scenery. Walking into the lobby feels like stepping back in time, connecting with the adventurous spirit of travelers from nearly a century ago. The original lodge, built in the 1920s, was destroyed by fire, and the current building was constructed in the 1930s, retaining the same classic design. When I saw the main lodge from a distance, I immediately thought of the old green roof from my earlier visits. The orange roof still felt unfamiliar, even though I first noticed the change in 2014.
グランドキャニオン国立公園のノースリムは、ラスベガスとフェニックスが最寄りの主要都市ですが、どちらからも長距離のドライブが必要です。一方、鉄道でのアクセスが早くから整備され、観光地として発展してきたサウスリムは、その圧倒的なアクセスの良さで多くの観光客を呼び込んでいます。また、ノースリムは標高が高く積雪量も多いため、冬季には公園にアクセスする唯一の道路が閉鎖されます。訪問できるのは、 毎年5月の中旬から10月の中旬までの期間に限られています。そのため、訪問者数はサウスリムのわずか10分の1程度にとどまっていますが、その結果、ノースリムにはサウスリムにはない静けさが漂い、雰囲気は大きく異なります。標高が約2500メートルと高いため、夏でも涼しく、緑豊かな森が広がる独特の景観が楽しめるのも大きな魅力の一つです。
Later, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, we made our way to the lodge's terrace, a spacious outdoor area perched right on the canyon's edge. With a couple of cold beers and glasses of wine in hand, we sat back, breathed in the cool mountain air, and watched the sky soften into pink, orange, and deep crimson. The terrace is a gathering spot for visitors, and it's easy to see why. The canyon feels almost within reach from here, and the shifting colors during sunset make for an unforgettable experience. We had a dinner reservation at the lodge's main dining room later that evening, so the terrace was the perfect place to relax while waiting for our table. The dining room, with its large windows and warm rustic decor, offered an equally inviting atmosphere. Dinner was pretty typical for a national park restaurant. Nothing exceptional, but it hit the spot after a long day of driving and hiking. I had prime rib, and my wife ordered a T-bone steak. The food was fine, but honestly the meal itself was just part of the experience. Even from a good table, the view isn't quite as impressive as the one from the terrace. But for some reason, the atmosphere inside the dining room is fantastic. The warm lighting, rustic decor, and the quiet buzz of conversations create a sense of timelessness that makes the experience worthwhile.
I bet it's a great spot to enjoy the sunrise while having a meal. Does the dining room offer breakfast too?
The next morning, we woke up early to catch the sunrise from the viewpoint near the lodge. We weren't the only ones. Several visitors were already there with their cameras, bundled up in jackets against the crisp morning air. As the first light broke over the canyon, the walls transformed into layers of orange, red, and gold. It was absolutely worth the early start. Afterward, we decided to have breakfast in the dining room. The prices were surprisingly reasonable, definitely more affordable than what you'd expect at a high-end hotel in a big city. After breakfast, we took a short walk along the trail near the lodge to enjoy the cool morning air and take a few more photos. By 10 a.m., we left the North Rim and headed east toward the historic Navajo Bridge, which spans the Colorado River just south of Page, near Lee's Ferry. From the bridge, we had a fantastic view of the river flowing through Marble Canyon, and we paused for a while to take some photos. By mid-afternoon, around 3 p.m., we finally arrived in Page, Arizona, ready for the next chapter of our adventure.
I've really enjoyed the scenery you've shown me, just as much as the stories that go with it. The landscapes of the Grand Circle are truly one of a kind. Those vast canyons and rock formations must be unforgettable for you. But speaking of unforgettable, let me show you a video of a golf course I played in Nikko. It reminded me of the course you played in Hurricane, Utah. It's different in many ways, but it has some unique features you might find interesting. Here's the video of the golf course. This is the first course we played in Nikko. It's tucked into the mountains, just a 10-minute drive uphill from Nikko to Shogu Shrine. It was a beautiful day, sunny and not crowded at all. Here, we took the monorail. The carts and golf bags came with us. The golf cart runs on rails like this. As you can see, the course is on a mountainside with some elevation changes, but the views were great and the lies were surprisingly flat.
Looks like you really enjoyed this course. But if I remember right, golf wasn't the main reason for your trip. What made you decide to visit Japan?
Many visitors come to Japan to see something they found on the internet or social media, like Mount Fuji or Kyoto. But for me, this trip wasn't just about sightseeing. I've always been fascinated by Japan's history, craftsmanship, and how tradition coexists with modern life. Visiting places like Nikko Toshogu Shrine and traditional Japanese gardens gave me a deeper appreciation of how aesthetics and harmony with nature are woven into Japanese culture. Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but here's another cable car scene to give you a better sense of how it works.
Wow, you must have been scared. How many times did you use the cable car during this round?
I think 4 times. This is the second one. I was scared at first, but the view from the cable car was pretty entertaining. Getting back to your question about why I decided to visit Japan, I've always been interested in the country's culture, history, and craftsmanship. The intricate details I saw at Nikko Toshogu Shrine really stood out to me. It's the kind of artistry you can only experience in Japan. Let me show you some pictures I took in Nikko. But beyond historical sites, I was also curious about everyday life. How people interact, how cities function so efficiently, and how tradition blends seamlessly into daily routines. These are things you can't fully grasp just by looking at pictures or reading online. Experiencing Japan firsthand has given me a whole new perspective that I could never get from the internet or social media alone. All right, let's get back to the course and pick up where we left off.
It's great to hear what interests you most about your trip to Japan. For me, what fascinated me the most on my trip was the sheer vastness of the canyons, the dramatic rock formations, and the endless open landscapes. There's something awe-inspiring about standing at the edge of a canyon and seeing nothing but nature stretching out for miles. Speaking of landscapes, I see a similar contrast between Japanese and American golf courses. In Japan, many courses are carefully designed within a limited space, often surrounded by mountains or forests. While in the US, especially in places like Arizona or Utah, golf courses can stretch endlessly across wide-open desert landscapes. The difference in scenery and layout really changes the experience of playing.
Yeah, I agree. Even though this course is in the mountains, the fairways and greens themselves weren't overly steep. The elevation changes added some challenge, but I didn't feel like I was constantly hitting shots from awkward lies.
Exactly. I think the golf course designer who designed this course did a great job designing it to fit the natural landscape while keeping it enjoyable to play. And the views from some of the holes looked spectacular. You must have enjoyed this course.
Oh, absolutely. The scenery was stunning, especially with the surrounding mountains and forests. It was definitely different from the courses I usually play. The combination of the landscape, the rail carts, and the cable cars made it such a memorable experience. But Nikko itself left a big impression on me, not just the golf. On our first day, we arrived at Tobu Nikko Station around 10:30 a.m. and decided to walk all the way to Toshogu Shrine. The walk itself was lovely, passing through quiet streets lined with small shops selling local specialties and souvenirs. Before entering the World Heritage Site, we stopped for lunch at a small restaurant near the entrance. Then, stepping into the shrine grounds, I was amazed by the intricate carvings and the peaceful atmosphere. Walking through the cedar-lined paths made me feel like I was stepping back in time. That night, we stayed at a traditional ryokan, where we experienced a kaiseki dinner. The variety of seasonal dishes, each beautifully presented, was incredible. And later, soaking in the outdoor onsen with a view of the mountains was the perfect way to end the day.
Where else did you play in Nikko?
I played a couple of Pete Dye-designed courses in Nikko. Both had an island green. You know, that's his signature design element, but island greens always make me nervous. You probably know that Pete Dye also designed TPC Sawgrass. The course in Nikko actually reminded me of the 17th hole at the Players' Championship, that pitching wedge par 3 with the island green. I've seen videos of pros hitting shot after shot into the water during the tournament. It makes me feel a little better about my own missed shot. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly what you mean. There was a par 3 hole at the golf course in Page where we had to hit from a tiny tee box down to the green, almost the height of a 5-story building, or even higher. I felt like launching a golf ball into the Colorado River below Horseshoe Bend. Here, take a look. This is a video of my wife hitting her shot from that tee box. Imagine mine was even higher than hers.
Speaking of Horseshoe Bend, what did you do after arriving in Page?
Well, you know, Page is a small town on the edge of Lake Powell and the Glen Canyon Dam. It's a popular stop for travelers exploring the area. We had planned to play that course on our second day in Page, after a half-day rafting tour on the Colorado River.
Page sounds like a fascinating place. What did your itinerary look like while you were there? I'd love to hear more.
It was a packed itinerary, so rather than rushing through everything, let me take you through it one day at a time. Right now, you're seeing the access road leading to Horseshoe Bend, and in a moment you'll get a closer look at the view that makes this place so famous. But we didn't go to Horseshoe Bend right away. When we arrived in Page, we first made a quick stop to fill up our cooler with food and drinks, since it was still a little too early to check in. Once we got that sorted, we finally headed to Horseshoe Bend. Even though I'd been there before, it was my wife's first time, so she was really excited to see it in person. It's just a 15-minute walk from the parking lot, but once you reach the edge, the view is breathtaking. The Colorado River makes a perfect horseshoe-shaped curve, and the canyon walls drop nearly 300 meters, 1,000 feet, straight down, no guardrails, just open cliffs. What you're watching now are the views from the cliff. From up here, you can really see how the Colorado River winds through the canyon, carving out this massive bend over millions of years. The water looks calm, and its deep green color contrasts beautifully with the pink and brown hues of the canyon walls. Visitors were busy capturing photos against this incredible backdrop. The best time to visit is definitely early morning or late afternoon when the lighting makes the rock formations glow. As the sun started setting, the colors shifted from bright red to deep orange. It was incredible to watch. Later that evening, we checked into Motel 8, which we had booked in advance for 3 nights. Even budget options like Motel 8 aren't cheap in Page. We paid $280 per night for our stay. With so many travelers passing through, accommodation prices remain high. There's no doubt that Page is getting more expensive, but for many travelers, the stunning scenery and unique experiences make it hard to resist, even if it means making some tough budget choices. Looking back, these tours used to be way more affordable. The Colorado River rafting trip, it was $60, now it's $129, more than double. Upper Antelope Canyon, it used to be $20, but now it starts at $85, and the Rainbow Bridge boat tour, I'm not sure what it costs these days. Also, there's a $30 entrance fee per vehicle for Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, though this can be covered by the America the Beautiful Pass. With more visitors coming to Page every year, it's no surprise that prices keep climbing.
Wow, that's crazy, but I guess that's what happens when a place goes viral on social media. Everyone's out here with their smartphones, capturing stunning shots and posting them online.
I know what you mean. Things have definitely changed. The next day, we took a boat tour to Rainbow Bridge. Here are some photos I took during the tour. It was a 6-hour round trip to see one of the world's largest natural rock arches. You might not remember, but I already showed you some of these before.
I remember the photos. I've been looking forward to hearing about the tour. I've been waiting for this.
Great, take another look while I tell you the story. We set off from Wahweap Marina in the morning, gliding slowly across the calm waters of Lake Powell. The lake stretched wide, with gentle ripples forming behind the boat as we cruised past distant cliffs and open water reflecting the morning light. As we moved further, the boat picked up speed, skimming smoothly across the open water. With the faster pace, the scenery shifted in an interesting way. The red rock formations, though still distant, seemed to rearrange themselves with every turn, revealing new angles and patterns in the landscape. As we neared our destination, the lake narrowed into a winding channel, flanked by towering canyon walls that seemed to close in around us. The boat slowed down as we carefully navigated through the passage, finally arriving at a small dock near Rainbow Bridge. At first, the bridge wasn't visible, hidden behind the canyon walls, but it wasn't far. A short 10-minute walk led us right to it. Standing beneath it, Rainbow Bridge was massive, far larger in person than any photo could capture. It reminded me of the rock formations in Arches National Park, but on an even more monumental scale. We took in the view for about 15 minutes before heading back to the boat. But what truly stood out to me wasn't just the bridge itself, it was the journey to get there and back. The ever-changing scenery of Lake Powell was unforgettable. The deep blue water, the white wake trails stretching behind us, the dramatic sky, and the towering red rock formations, it felt like the landscape was constantly shifting, revealing something new at every moment. Particularly, the voyage back from Rainbow Bridge was spectacular. After a brief stop at a small harbor, the boat picked up speed again, cutting swiftly across the water. As we moved, the sky began to fill with clouds, transforming the scene above us. The sunlight filtered through in patches, casting dynamic shadows and highlights over the canyon walls. The surrounding cliffs and rock formations, some towering, others smaller buttes and mesas on the horizon, seemed to shift more quickly now, changing with every mile. The combination of the moving water, the shifting sky, and the evolving rock formations created a surreal and almost cinematic experience. The clouds took on interesting shapes, adding an extra layer of depth to the vast desert sky. It was truly amazing, like watching a living landscape in motion, a place where land, water, and sky constantly reshape the view, making every moment feel unique.
That sounds incredible. Rainbow Bridge is massive and impressive, but it sounds like the journey itself was even more breathtaking. Especially on the way back, you must have enjoyed the views of the clouds drifting across the sky, the shimmering lake, and the towering cliffs surrounding you.
Absolutely. The views were unreal. It felt like a completely different world out there. Well, the next morning, we set off on a half-day rafting trip down the Colorado River, a fun and relaxing way to experience the canyon from a completely different perspective. We started at a small pier directly beneath Glen Canyon Dam, boarding a rubber raft with an engine along with about 20 other passengers. Drifting away from the towering dam, we entered a world of steep red rock walls, reflected perfectly in the calm river waters. Not long after we started, our guide, a Native American woman with years of experience leading rafting tours, began sharing stories about Glen Canyon and the Colorado River. She explained how the layers of rock, shaped over millions of years, held stories far older than humanity itself. She also spoke about the people who arrived in this region during the Gold Rush era, sharing insights into those who ventured here beyond the Native American communities. Before reaching Horseshoe Bend, we made a brief stop at a riverbank, where a short trail led us to ancient petroglyphs carved into the canyon walls. Left behind by the ancestral Puebloans centuries ago, these markings were a glimpse into a civilization that once thrived in these remote canyons. Back on the raft, we continued downstream until we reached Horseshoe Bend, now seeing it from below, the very place where we had stood on the cliff 2 days earlier. Looking up, the canyon walls seemed even more immense and overwhelming from the river. Then our guide had us do something unexpected. She asked us all to scream up toward the people standing on the cliff above. Apparently, this was a long-standing tour tradition. After shouting, we looked up and listened carefully. For a moment, we thought we could faintly see people waving and hear distant voices from above, but it was hard to be sure. I actually recorded a video of this moment, capturing not only our voices, but also the echoes bouncing off the canyon walls.
Right, so on the count of 3, if we say hello, they can hear us.
Okay,
So everybody want to count of 3, say hello?
Yeah.
All right, so ready? 1, 2, 3. Hello!
Scared of the death.
From there, we continued our journey downriver. Horseshoe Bend was about halfway to Lee's Ferry, and as we moved further, the canyon walls, which had felt impossibly high at the start, gradually began to lower. It was a subtle but fascinating shift, as if the river itself was guiding us out of the deep canyon and into the open desert. Approaching Lee's Ferry, our guide told us about its historical significance. Before Navajo Bridge was built in 1929, Lee's Ferry was the only river crossing for hundreds of miles. For generations, native tribes, pioneers, and traders relied on a small ferry to make their way between northern Arizona and southern Utah. What seemed like a quiet and remote spot now had once been a vital link for survival and trade in this rugged region. After a journey filled with history, breathtaking scenery, and unexpected moments, we finally reached Lee's Ferry, marking the end of an unforgettable experience on the Colorado River.
That must have been incredible. learning all that history while floating through the canyon. If I ever get the chance to visit Glen Canyon, I'd love to experience both the boat tour and the rafting. It sounds so fascinating.
Later, we boarded a bus that took us back to Page. As we crossed the Navajo Bridge once more, we retraced our route through the desert landscape, arriving back in Page by early afternoon.
Actually, that reminds me, speaking of the Navajo Bridge, our hotel is not far from Niwanbashi, so we actually took a walk there yesterday. I had heard about its historical significance, but when we arrived, I found myself thinking, wait, is this really the famous Niwanbashi? It was interesting to see how Niwanbashi was once the bustling starting point of the Tokaido, Japan's most important travel route. But today, it didn't even look like a bridge at first. I only realized it when I saw the nameplate. It felt more like part of the road running beneath the highway. It was hard to imagine what it must have looked like in the Edo period.
You know, the Tokaido stretched nearly 500 kilometers, about 300 miles, connecting Nihonbashi in Edo to Sanjo Ohashi in Kyo, the old name for Kyoto. Take a look at this series of images by Utagawa Hiroshige, a renowned Edo period painter. He created an entire collection of ukiyo-e prints depicting all 53 post stations along the route, including Nihonbashi. Hiroshige's iconic woodblock prints, now in the public domain via Wiki Commons, offer a vivid glimpse into what the Tokaido once looked like. Back then, merchants, samurai, and travelers gathered here before setting off on long journeys.
Yes, I know Hiroshige and his art. I learned that the journey from Edo to Kyoto took days or even weeks on foot. It's fascinating to think about how much travel has changed. What once took weeks can now be done in less than 3 hours by bullet train. The contrast really puts into perspective how transportation has evolved over time. In fact, on our way back from Nikko via Utsunomiya, we took the bullet train instead of the Tobu line we had used to get there. Even though the bullet train we took made multiple stops, the speed difference was still impressive.
Well, it's great that you got to experience the bullet train. You might be even more impressed to know that the fastest service, the Nozomi, can take you from Tokyo to Kyoto in just about 2 hours and 11 minutes.
That really puts things into perspective, but let's get back to your journey. What happened after the Colorado River rafting?
Later that afternoon, we played a round of golf at an 18-hole championship course in Page, the only full-sized course in this wild canyon landscape. The nearest other full-sized courses were the ones we played earlier in Hurricane, Utah, or further south in Flagstaff, Arizona.
How was the course? Any memorable moments?
It was a windy afternoon, but we had a great time. From the first tee, we saw a view you don't usually associate with a golf course. A green fairway and putting green framed by a towering red cliff or boulder on the side of the hole. To be honest, what stood out the most wasn't the quality of the golf course itself, but the setting, how this was one of the very few golf courses situated in the middle of such a vast, rugged desert. Playing here wasn't just about the course design, but about how the environment influenced the way you approached the game. The course conditions were decent, about what you'd expect from a public course, but playing surrounded by nothing but red rocks and canyons made it a truly one-of-a-kind experience. After days of seeing only rugged landscapes, stepping onto lush green fairways felt almost surreal. Some holes had breathtaking elevated views overlooking Lake Powell, which made the round even more enjoyable. It wasn't the most challenging course I've played, but considering the scenery and atmosphere, it was definitely a memorable one.
That sounds amazing. Playing with views of Lake Powell must have been something special.
Yes, it really was. On our last day in Page, we visited Antelope Canyon, and it was just as surreal and beautiful as the photos you saw earlier. Since you've already seen the pictures I took, I'll just show you a few this time. We toured Lower Antelope Canyon because I had already visited Upper Antelope Canyon in 2014, and Lower Canyon's location was more convenient for heading to Monument Valley afterward. The tour was great, but if I had to compare, I'd say the Upper Canyon was slightly better. That said, the way sunlight filters through the narrow sandstone walls was just as mesmerizing as I remembered from my Upper Canyon visit. Since the best time to visit Antelope Canyon is when the sun is high, tours don't start early in the morning. Instead, they typically run from late morning to mid-afternoon when the light beams create the most dramatic effects inside the canyon. After finishing the tour, we left Antelope Canyon around 2 p.m. and began our drive toward Monument Valley, a 125-mile, 200-kilometer journey that took roughly 2 hours. For much of the drive from Page to Kayenta, the scenery remained relatively unchanged, a vast desert stretching to the horizon, except for a section where the road cut through hilly terrain. But as we passed Kayenta, scattered buttes and mesas began to appear, rising from the desert floor, a clear sign that we were approaching Monument Valley. Eventually, we reached the entrance to Monument Valley Tribal Park. To enter, we paid the entrance fee, which I believe was $20 at the time. America, the Beautiful Pass wasn't valid here. From there, we continued toward the main visitor area, which included a large parking lot, a visitor center with shops, a restaurant, exhibits, and the View Hotel, a lodge perched right inside the park with an unparalleled vantage point of the valley. Just as we were checking in, we unexpectedly ran into the couple we had met during the Rainbow Bridge boat tour. A fun coincidence that reminded us just how small the travel world can be. Stepping into our room, we were immediately greeted by a breathtaking sight. The same panoramic view visible from the View Hotel's balcony. Right in front of us stood West Mitten, East Mitten, and Merrick Butte, bathed in the warm glow of the late afternoon sun. After a short rest, we set out to explore Monument Valley Scenic Drive, a dirt road winding through the heart of the valley, leading us deeper into its awe-inspiring landscape. Later, we returned from the drive and settled back into our room. Instead of dining out, we put together sandwiches with food and salad packs we had picked up earlier, poured ourselves glasses of wine, and enjoyed the sunset from our balcony. As the sun dipped lower, the buttes and mesas slowly shifted in color, from deep reds to soft purples and oranges, creating an unforgettable scene. It was the perfect way to end the day, simply sitting back, soaking in the views and watching the landscape transform before our eyes. The next morning before sunrise, we woke up and stepped outside to witness the valley slowly awakening. Several travelers had already gathered to watch the sun emerge from the horizon, painting the landscape in ever-changing hues of red and gold. It was a mesmerizing sight, and we stood there until the sun was fully above the horizon, soaking in the tranquility of the moment. After breakfast at the restaurant, we set off again on Scenic Drive, this time venturing further into the valley. Rather than describing it, I'll let the scenery speak for itself. Here's a glimpse of the drive through Monument Valley. Enjoy the ride. This part of the video was filmed in the afternoon of the day we arrived. We drove into Monument Valley, stopping at John Ford's Point to take in the view before heading back to the hotel for the night. Taking in the views from John Ford's Point, we headed back to our hotel for the night. The next morning, we continued deeper into Monument Valley, entering the one-way scenic drive to explore more of its breathtaking landscapes. The next morning, we entered the one-way scenic loop from the intersection near John Ford's Point, exploring deeper into the valley. As we continued along the scenic loop, the landscape revealed new perspectives of Monument Valley's iconic formations. Approaching Artist's Point, the view opened up to a vast panoramic scene, one of the most breathtaking viewpoints in the valley. Although we spent less than a full day in Monument Valley, it was one of the most unforgettable experiences of our trip.
Monument Valley is definitely on my bucket list. I'd love to visit someday. The landscape looks absolutely breathtaking. Those towering buttes, the endless desert, and the dramatic skies. There's something so iconic and almost otherworldly about it. I imagine standing there in person must feel completely different from just seeing photos.
You bet. If you ever get the chance, you won't be disappointed. Well, we headed to the south rim of the Grand Canyon after the Monument Valley. We drove back to the point where the road intersects the road to Page, and then took the other road to the west to the south rim. We entered Grand Canyon National Park from the east entrance near Desert View Tower, one of the most popular stops along the south rim. Built in 1950, the tower offers a spectacular vantage point of the Colorado River winding through the canyon. Even though we had seen this view many times before, it was still a moment of wonder, a powerful reminder of nature's incredible force and the vast scale of the Grand Canyon. This is arguably the best viewpoint for seeing the Colorado River within the canyon. Our visit to the South Rim was brief, much like our time at Bryce Canyon National Park. We stayed at a motel just outside the park and had only the afternoon and the following morning to explore the canyon. You'll see a map of the South Rim shortly, but from the Desert View Tower, we continued west along Desert View Drive, stopping at a few viewpoints before reaching Mather Point, the last major overlook on this route, located near the main visitor center. After a brief stop at the visitor center and taking in the scenery, we exited the park and headed into Tucson, the small town just south of the park entrance. Since we hadn't booked a place to stay for the night, we left the park and drove around looking for an inexpensive motel. Fortunately, we found a budget-friendly spot with a vacancy. After checking in, we returned to the Grand Canyon in the late afternoon, making our way to Hermit's Rest at the westernmost end of the scenic route. There, we watched the sun slowly set over the canyon, casting golden hues across the vast landscape. The view was breathtaking, one of the most memorable moments of the trip. After sunset, we left the park again, stopping by a supermarket to restock our cooler with food and drinks. We also grabbed some fast food for dinner. While waiting for our meal, we took the opportunity to do some laundry. After a quick shower and meal, exhaustion from the long day caught up with us, and we went to bed early.
I'm not sure if I'll get a chance to visit the North Rim anytime soon, but I'd love to visit the South Rim someday. If I had a week off, I could fly into Las Vegas and drive from there, right? I'd rather stay inside the park than at a motel outside. How do you book a place like that?
Yeah, flying into Vegas is a good plan. It's about a 4.5-hour drive. If you want to stay inside the park, El Tovar Hotel is the most famous lodge, right on the rim. It's a historic hotel with great views, and while it's not cheap, it's more affordable than people expect. Other options include Bright Angel Lodge, which is more budget-friendly, and Mazwick Lodge or Yavapai Lodge, which are set back from the rim.
El Tovar sounds incredible, but I've also heard people camp at the Grand Canyon. How does that work?
Camping is a great option. Mather Campground is the main one inside the park, and it's open year-round. Reservations are required, especially during peak seasons, but there are also first-come, first-served sites.
I think I'd prefer a lodge for my first visit, but camping sounds like an amazing experience too.
The next morning, at sunrise, we re-entered the park to walk along the rim and take more photos. The south rim offered a different perspective from the north rim. The canyon walls appeared more layered, and the shifting sunlight brought out stunning variations in color. We spent a couple of hours soaking in the views before setting off for our next destination, Sedona. On the way, we stopped for lunch at an Indian restaurant in Flagstaff. Instead of taking the interstate, we opted for the scenic route through Oak Creek Canyon. The winding road led us through lush forests and dramatic red rock formations, giving us a preview of the incredible landscapes awaiting us in Sedona. For the next few minutes, enjoy a visual journey through Sedona with the photos I took during our trip.
All right, it's great to get a glimpse of Sedona. I've always been curious about it. What makes it so special?
Sedona is often described as one of the most breathtaking destinations in Arizona, known for its towering red rock formations, scenic canyons, and mystical energy vortexes. Unlike the desert landscapes of Phoenix or Scottsdale, Sedona offers a mix of high desert and pine forests, making it a visually unique destination. The town is a haven for outdoor enthusiasts, with hiking, mountain biking, and off-road jeep tours being popular activities. The famous Cathedral Rock, Bell Rock, and Devil's Bridge Trail offer some of the most iconic views in the region. Beyond its natural beauty, Sedona is also known for its thriving arts community and spiritual retreats. The town is filled with galleries, boutique shops, and wellness centers, attracting visitors seeking relaxation and inspiration. Sedona's landscape and atmosphere make it a truly unique place to visit, and for me, one of the highlights was experiencing it through golf.
I'd love to hear about your golf experience in Sedona.
Before checking into our room for the night, we spent some time exploring the town. Staying at Enchantment Resort, one of the most luxurious accommodations of our trip, made the experience feel extra special. With its gated private atmosphere and top-tier service, it was a level of luxury we weren't entirely accustomed to. After checking in, a staff member escorted us to our room in a golf cart. Unsure about the usual tipping etiquette at a resort like this, I handed him $10, hoping it was appropriate. That evening, we dined at the resort's restaurant, which lived up to its reputation, just as refined as I had expected.
アメリカのチップの習慣について説明します。このままセドナの写真を見ながらお聞きください。近年、アメリカではチップの相場が上昇傾向にあります。まず、レストランのチップですが、フルサービスのレストランでは、朝食や昼食は15から 20%、ディナーでは18から 25% が一般的です。ビュッフェの場合、基本的にセルフサービスのためチップは不要ですが、ドリンクの提供や食器の片付けなどのサービスがある場合は、それに応じて渡す人もいます。また、最近ではセルフサービスの店でもレジにチップを求めるボタンが表示されることがありますが、基本的にチップは不要です。一方で、ファーストフード店やフードコート、通常のテイクアウトではチップは必要ありません。外食費を抑えたい場合は、セルフサービスの店やテイクアウトを活用すると良いでしょう。次に、ホテルでのチップについて、アメリカのホテルでは、基本的なサービスは宿泊料金に含まれているため、チップは不要です。ただし、ベルボーイが荷物を運んでくれた場合は荷物1個につき、2から5ドル、バレーパーキングで車を受け取る際には3から5ドルが目安です。また、ルームサービスの食事にはサービス料が通常加算されますが、含まれていない場合は10から 15% をチップとして渡します。ベッドメイキングや清掃に対しては、短期滞在や低価格ホテル、モーテルでは不要ですが、1泊あたり2から5ドルを渡す人もいます。また、食事を客室まで運んでもらうルームサービスなどはベッドメイキングや清掃とは別のもので、チップを渡す際は請求書にサービス料が含まれているかを確認し、含まれていなければ10から 15% を渡すと良いでしょう。アメリカのチップ文化は面倒に感じるかもしれませんが、現地の習慣として受け入れ、 気持ちよく旅を楽しむことが大切です。チップ用の小銭を常に用意しておくとスムーズに対応できます。
Now back to my time in Sedona. One of the main reasons for staying here was to play the club at Seven Canyons, nestled in the heart of Boynton Canyon. The next morning, we made the short 10-minute drive to the course, eager to experience its renowned scenery. The course was quiet, giving us the rare opportunity to play at our own pace. After a solid tee shot on the first hole, I found myself looking at one of the best views of the round, the green framed by towering red rock formations. It met my high expectations, setting the stage for what I hoped would be a visually stunning course. However, as we moved through the next few holes, the scenery became more subdued, with fewer dramatic rock formations than I had anticipated. At that point, I felt a slight sense of disappointment. The resort itself had a refined and exclusive atmosphere, offering a pleasant contrast to the more budget-conscious parts of our trip. It was a nice change of pace, but when it came to the golf course, my expectations weren't entirely met. That said, later in the round, we came across several holes with striking red rock backdrops, seamlessly blending into the course design. My initial impression gradually shifted, and by the end of the round, I felt the experience was enjoyable. Comparing it to Sedona Golf Resort, which I played several years ago, I'd say this course was slightly better, though whether it justified the premium price was still up for debate. After wrapping up our round, we visited Tlaquepaque Arts and Shopping Village, a charming shopping area designed to resemble a traditional Mexican village. We spent some time browsing its boutique shops and art galleries, picking up a few things along the way. After a late lunch at one of the Mexican restaurants, we made our way to Scottsdale to continue our journey.
So, after Sedona, you headed to Phoenix. Was that your final stop? How far is it from Sedona?
It took about 2 hours to get there from Sedona. Scottsdale is part of the greater Phoenix area, but it has its own unique character, known for its luxury resorts, golf courses, and vibrant old town. The next morning, we headed to Troon North Golf Club, one of Scottsdale's most well-known courses, set in the Sonoran Desert just north of the city. The club has 2 courses, and we played the Pinnacle course. We were paired with a friendly couple about our age. The first thing that struck me was how narrow the fairways looked from the tee, but after finding the first fairway, I settled in quickly. Surrounded by desert terrain and towering saguaro cacti, it felt like there was no room for error, but as the round went on, I realized the fairways were actually more forgiving than they appeared. With luxury homes lining parts of the course, it had that signature Scottsdale feel. The greens had some slope but weren't as fast as I expected. To my surprise, I played really well, my best round of the trip so far, and shot a 75. Afterward, the couple invited us for some cold drinks, and we had a great time chatting and wrapping up another memorable day in Scottsdale. The following day, we played TPC Scottsdale's Stadium course. As soon as we entered the clubhouse, we saw pictures of Hideki Matsuyama, celebrating one of his 2 victories here. The course is home to the Phoenix Open. Most of the year, it's a public course, but during the tournament, it transforms into a stadium-like venue with massive grandstands and an electrifying atmosphere. The most famous hole, the par 3 16th, called the Coliseum, is completely enclosed by grandstands during the tournament, creating one of the loudest and most electrifying settings in golf. But it was unnoticeable if you don't know about it. That day, we were paired with 2 young golfers. They played from the championship tees at 7,261 yards, the same setup used for the Phoenix Open, while I played from the 6,800-yard tees. It was fun watching them launch drives a mile. We had another pleasant day in Scottsdale, making the most of our final round. The next day, we flew out of Phoenix International Airport, connecting through Seattle on our way back to Japan. Unlike the beginning of our journey, our layover went smoothly, and before we knew it, we were back home, bringing an unforgettable 2-week adventure to a close.
What an incredible 2-week journey. I really enjoyed listening to your stories and seeing all the amazing places you visited. From your layover troubles in San Francisco to the breathtaking landscapes of the Grand Circle, and even the unique golf experiences along the way, it felt like I was traveling with you. Hearing about all these destinations has made me want to take a Grand Circle trip myself someday, though I've also been enjoying my own time exploring Tokyo. There's so much to see in the world, and your journey, it was a great reminder of that. Thank you for sharing it with me.
I appreciate that, and thank you for coming to AJ's Talk Room. This story turned out a bit longer than I originally planned, but I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it. Every trip teaches you something new, and this one was no exception. I hope we'll meet again in the future. Next time, I'd love to hear your long story.
これで2人の対談は終わりです。AJ のアメリカ西部の壮大な自然とゴルフを通じた特別な体験、そしてサラの東京、日光の旅。旅を重ねるごとに新しい発見があり、新たな思い出が生まれます。もし皆さんが長期間旅をするチャンスがあったら、どこへ行き、どんな体験をしたいですか？いつか訪れてみたい場所や挑戦してみたいことはありますか？ぜひコメントで教えてください。それでは今回の旅の話はここまで。また次の旅でお会いしましょう。